Here we are for another installment of On the Porch with Pastor. There's a rain gently cascading down here around me, and I don't know how severe it's likely to get, but we're going to give it our best shot. I trust that you'll be able to hear me through it all. Our installment today is called My Grandma, the Saint. I want to confess my prejudice right up front by declaring unequivocally that my Grandma Norma was the sweetest lady who ever lived. I didn't realize this until she'd passed away, which explains why I drove by her house sometimes without stopping to visit. She was past 90 when she died, stumbled off the back porch, broke her hip, and died 4 days after the operation that was supposed to make her as good as new. I suspect she overheard the doctor say nursing home and simply willed herself to die. Technically, her heart gave out, which makes sense knowing how much she used it. Grandma was the family antidote to the both parents working and too tired to talk syndrome. Since this isn't an essay about how we have to work so much because we want so much, I won't dwell on that. I'll only say that Grandma decided early on that being there for children was more important than working to buy them stuff they didn't need in the first place. Psychiatrists have the couch, but Grandma had the porch swing and the kitchen table and a certain way of listening as if you were the only one in God's world worth hearing. A lot of talk these days about the formation of self-esteem and helping children feel valued, but we want the schools to do it. I remember when an hour with Grandma left you feeling like royalty. Given her prospects, I understood her wanting to cross heaven's threshold. Only thing is, she stepped over before we were done needing her. I wanted my sons to do some swing time with her. Wanted them to hear how there was no one quite like them and how special they were and handsome and smart. The kind of things Grandma told me. Now I guess it falls to my mom. I wonder if she knows that, or if I'll have to tell her. I suspect she knows, being Grandma's daughter. I call my grandmother a saint because she's the only person I ever met who prayed her rosary twice a day. Those are the only times she wasn't available to us, when she was in her bedroom lifting up her Hail Marys and Our Fathers. As a child, I resented the notion that talking with God was more important than talking with me. In retrospect, I understand that time she spent in prayer helped her be all the more present for others. Maybe the reason we don't have time for one another anymore isn't because we work too much, but because we pray too little. How else can God reorder our priorities? At her funeral, the priest said it was a day of celebration. That's the kind of thing we ministers learn to say in seminary, and it holds up until someone like Grandma dies. Then no amount of heaven talk eases the pain. The graveyard sees a hurt the classroom never knows. In the Bible, it tells us not to worry, that in God's house are found mansions aplenty. I don't think Grandma would like a mansion. Too much dusting. Just give her a porch swing and a child needing love. Throw in a breeze that blows in from the old days, when an hour with the saint made all the world right. I know that as I was reading that story, that many of you couldn't help but reflect on your own grandmothers, as I too reflected on my own grandmothers. One has gone to be with the Lord, and the other, bless her soul, is 95 and still holding on. Hi, Granny. And we love her to death, and we love our grandparents, and we know that it's starting to get hot out here while it's raining. Sorry. Um, I'm crooked. A crooked preacher. um, we're, where was I? Talking about grandma. Oh, we all have those grandmas that for whom or about whom we could say they're the best cooks in the world, or they loved you more than anybody, or your fondest memories, some of them involve grandma or mama or nana or whatever the term of endearment might be. But I believe there's something to this. Maybe it's not that we're too busy, for clearly our grandparents were every bit as hard workers as we are. Many of them toiled multiple shifts at the plant or incessant garden work that they depended on for sustenance, because many of them grew up through the Great Depression. It's not that we're too busy, it's that maybe we pray too little. Um, I know that heaven only knows those secret hours that our grandparents spent in prayer for us. Um, I'm often reminded of the stories of my great grandfather, who was an itinerant preacher up in the mountains back in the day, the old day. um, he often prayed and would withdraw out to the confines of the smokehouse for some solidarity, for some solitude, and pray. And he used to pray for his grandsons and his great grandsons that God would raise up preachers and that they would be world changers for Christ and all of these things. And though I never got to meet him, he passed long before I came along. The stories that my dad tells about him still ring in my spirit, and I can't help but believe that maybe I'm here as a preacher of the gospel today because God chose to hear the prayer of a humble child of his, crying up next to hanging sides of pork or beef in the smokehouse, crying out for his heritage, his progeny to know the Lord and to broadcast his soon coming. Well, I'm going to stop reflecting now because I'm going to cry if I don't. But we love you, and Jesus is coming soon, friends. So keep your eyes to the skies.